On the 12th of April 2009, 3 rifle shots cracked off the fantail of the destroyer Bainbridge in the Indian Ocean. 3 pirates died in a drifting lifeboat in the same instant, and Captain Richard Phillips walked out of 5 days of captivity into the most famous rescue of the decade. The shooters were DevGru snipers from Red Squadron, and within weeks the world knew it, and within 4 years Hollywood had filmed it. Now hold that image, because here is the strange part. Inside JSOC, the command that owns both DevGru and Delta, nobody was surprised at who took that shot. The water had already decided. There is a ledger inside that command, older than most of the men on it, that sorts every mission in the world into lanes. And the lane that almost never gets a movie is the one this video is about. The ledger is not a rumor. Sean Naylor, the reporter who spent a career inside JSOC's orbit, laid out its logic across 600 pages in relentless strike, the closest thing to an open history of the command that exists. And what his record shows is that the question SEAL fans and Delta fans have been fighting about for 40 years, who is better, is the wrong question. JSOC has never once asked it. JSOC asks a colder one, whose problem is this? If you want to understand which problems have Delta's name written on them before the phone even rings, and why some of those problems officially do not exist, subscribe to War Code, because the quiet half of this ledger is the half your algorithm never shows you. Start with why 2 units exist at all, because the split was born in fire, not in planning. Delta was stood up in the late 1970s as the nation's dedicated counter-terrorist force for the hardest land problems: embassies, airliners on tarmacs, hostages behind walls. Then came the Iranian desert in 1980, burning aircraft wreckage at a refueling strip called Desert 1, 8 dead Americans, and the reckoning that followed. Out of that wreckage, Washington built the architecture we now call JSOC, and the Navy stood up its own dedicated unit for the domain no land force could ever truly own: the water, the ships underway, the oil platforms and heavy swells, the harbors and anchorages and hulls. The new unit at Dam Neck grew into DevGru, and from its first day its charter was the maritime nightmare, the hijacked liner, the seized tanker, the hostage on the waves. Inside the command, the 2 units grew into mirror structures, squadrons of assaulters and snipers and reconnaissance specialists cycling through a permanent alert rotation, so that on any given night of the last 4 decades, 1 squadron at Fort Bragg and 1 at Dam Neck has been sitting on its gear, wheels up ready, waiting for the ledger to speak. The alert bird does not care about branch rivalry. It cares about the shape of the problem, and the shape of the problem is decided by geography first, which is why the oldest rule holds even now. Water rings the phone in Virginia, land rings it in North Carolina. That is the first and oldest line in the ledger, and it has never moved. If the problem floats, it belongs to the Navy. If the problem sits on dirt, in a building, behind a border, it belongs to Fort Bragg. To see what the land lane looks like when the ledger calls its number, go to Panama City, the night of December 20th, 1989, minutes before the invasion of Panama begins. In a cell in the Modelo prison sits an American named Kurt Muse, arrested for running anti-Noriega radio broadcasts, and the regime has made its intentions plain. If the Americans ever come, the first bullet fired belongs to Muse. There is a guard posted outside his cell whose only job is to kill him. The mission had been rehearsed for months in secret, on a full mock-up of the prison built in the United States, run again and again until every man could walk the cell block blind, because the plan allowed 6 minutes and the guard's orders allowed 1 bullet. So the first American action of that entire war is not a beach or an airfield. It is Delta operators riding Little Bird helicopters onto the prison roof in the dark, with a Spectre gunship holding the night above them and the commandancia across the street already burning. They blow through the roof access, kill the executioner on their way down, and reach the cell. The lock takes 2 rifle rounds and refuses to break, so a small charge finishes the argument. They dress Muse in body armor, a helmet, and goggles like one of their own, move him to the roof, and lift off as the city erupts. 1 overloaded Little Bird goes down in the street with operators clinging to its skids. 5 of them are wounded, and every man, including Muse, still comes out alive. 6 minutes inside the prison. The record calls it the first successful hostage rescue by an American counter-terrorist unit, and the men who did it were never named. Muse went on to write a book about his own rescue, and he tells audiences to this day that he owes his life to men whose faces he saw for 6 minutes and whose names he will never be allowed to say. That is the Delta Lane at its purest, a human life behind a specific door on land, a clock measured in minutes, and no second chance. And the only person on the mission free to talk about it is the cargo. Now look at the lanes almost nobody files under war at all, because this is where the title of this video lives. When the United States needed a personal security detail for General Norman Schwarzkopf during the Gulf War, the men standing around him in polo shirts and pistols at Rafah Airport in 1991 were Delta operators, a fact the world only learned because one photograph escaped into the public record. Protecting a four-star commanding a war is not a raid. There is no door to blow. It is weeks of tradecraft, route work, crowd reading, and restraint, which is exactly why the Ledger sent it to Fort Bragg. Schwarzkopf was running the largest American ground campaign since Vietnam, inside missile range of a dictator with active assassination services, and the men chosen to stand between him and that threat came from the same building as the men who had cleared the Modelo prison a year earlier. Veterans of that era describe unit men rotating between assault work and protection work as a matter of course, the rifle and the polo shirt as two settings of the same instrument. And when the same class of mission surfaced a decade later around Hamid Karzai in Kandahar, the Ledger routed it by theater and tasking to DevGru, whose operators killed a would-be assassin at arm's length from Karzai in September of 2002 and took a ricochet doing it. Both units carry quiet lanes. The point is not that one owns them all. The point is that these missions exist in volume. They shape wars and they never trend, because their success condition is that you never hear about them. Notice how each of those two details reach the public at all. The Schwarzkopf detail exists in history because a single photograph at a Saudi airport slipped into the record. The Karzai detail exists in history because an assassin forced it into the open with a pistol. Every protective mission that worked perfectly, and there have been decades of them, left nothing behind for anyone to report. The archive of this lane is an archive of absences. The clearest window into Delta's quietest lane opened in the winter of 2002, in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan, weeks before Operation Anaconda. Conventional planners were building an assault on the Shahikat Valley with satellite maps and drone feeds. A Delta lieutenant colonel named Pete Blaber did not trust either, so he took a reconnaissance element built around Delta's recce specialists, roughly 45 men, sprinkled with hand-picked DevGru SEALs and technical experts from the ISA, and put them into the mountains the hard way. No helicopters, because rotor noise briefs the enemy. His teams drove modified all-terrain vehicles through riverbeds at night and climbed into the high Shahikat in knee-deep snow, hauling their lives on their backs to owl-watch a valley the enemy believed was unwatchable. Two of the teams that made those climbs were built from Delta recce men, and a third came from DevGru's own reconnaissance troop, because Blaber picked shooters by skill, not by patch, which tells you everything about how the Ledger actually works at the working level. What the observation posts saw rewrote the battle before it began. The enemy was not camped on the valley floor where the plan expected him. He was dug into the high ground, in the ridgeline positions the teams were lying among, and that single correction, radioed down from frozen hide sites, saved the operation from assaulting into a prepared kill zone. The name for this work is Advanced Force Operations, low-visibility men going in before the war arrives to make the war survivable. And when Anaconda kicked off, it was Blaber's frozen observation posts that saw the valley as it actually was, and walked airstrike after airstrike onto positions the planning maps had missed. The activity found the signals, the recce teams confirmed the truth, and infantrymen who never learned their names lived because of it. That is advanced force work. It is a Delta specialty. It predates the War on Terror, and it is the single least filmable job in the American arsenal. If you are still reading the Ledger with us, you already think in lanes, not in logos. Cadets get every video 24 hours early, and a badge in the comments. The link is below. Then 2003 arrived, and the Ledger drew its biggest line ever across an entire map of the Earth. When the invasion of Iraq opened a second war, JSOC split the world between its two scalpels. Delta became the core of Task Force Green and took Iraq. DevGru held Afghanistan as Task Force Blue. One command, two theaters, and the assignment was not a coin flip. Iraq was becoming the largest urban manhunting problem in American history, a networked insurgency breeding car bombs through cities of millions. And that shape of problem, doors and networks and agents and land infrastructure, matched the machine Fort Bragg had been building since the 70s. What Delta did inside that lane went far past raiding. Naylor reported that the unit ran its own stable of Iraqi agents, men nicknamed the Mohawks, who could walk streets no American could survive, seeding targets and even carrying modified devices into internet cafes so that the network hunting al-Qaeda's couriers could read what the couriers typed. Squadrons cycled through Baghdad and Mosul on a pace no unit had ever sustained, industrializing the raid cycle that eventually broke al-Qaeda in Iraq's spine and put Zarqawi under a pair of 500-pound bombs. The doctrine that drove it, find, fix, finish, exploit, and analyze, turned every raid into the intelligence source for the next one. Phones and hard drives ripped off objectives at midnight, feeding target packets by dawn, 3 raids a night, night after night, for years. Commanders called the machine the unblinking eye. Almost none of it was visible in real time. And when Iraq's appetite outgrew even Delta's squadron cycle, the ledger bent the old lines pragmatically rather than breaking them. DevGru squadrons rotated in to carry the western desert out of al-Assad, while the Green Task Force ran the theater. Rangers carried whole target sets of their own, and the machine consumed everyone JSOC could feed it. Even then, the architecture kept its accent. Iraq was run as a land campaign, from the land unit's playbook, with the land unit's tradecraft at its center, and the men brought in to reinforce it worked inside that frame. The SEALs War Next Door produced the decade's famous Knights. The Green War produced arrest ledgers, source networks, and a dismantled insurgency, written in redactions. And there are lanes quieter still, the ones that only surface in a sentence or two of the public record. JSOC's charter, as Naylor and every serious description of the command layout, includes standing national missions that have nothing to do with raids at all, among them the render safe problem, the seizure and disarming of weapons of mass destruction should they ever go loose, a mission the command trains against and hopes never to run. Delta's tradecraft culture, the beards, the civilian cars, the operators who can live inside a foreign city, exists because some of the ledger's land lanes require Americans to be present where no American can be seen. Naylor's history describes the mechanism that makes the most sensitive of those lanes legal, operators detailed away from the military entirely and placed under CIA authorities for specific operations, sheep-dipped, in the old phrase, out of Title 10 and into Title 50, so that the man on the street corner in a denied city is, on paper, not a soldier at all. The D-Boys have moved in and out of that arrangement since the 80s. You will never see the list of places it has taken them, and that is the entire point of the arrangement. What those lanes have produced over the decades is exactly the kind of thing this channel cannot show you, and honestly, should not be able to. The correct amount of public footage of advanced force operations is 0. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. So why does the split endure, 40 years on? Because the two units are not interchangeable parts. They are two different evolutionary answers to two different environments. Dam Neck's pipeline builds combat swimmers, shipboarders, men engineered for the worst hours of the maritime world. And the Phillips Rescue was that pipeline doing precisely what it was built for. Its founding mission come home. Even the way the shooters arrived told the story. A DevGru package parachuting into open ocean at night with their boats, swimming to link up, then riding to the destroyer, an insertion no land unit on Earth trains to own. When the 3 shots came off that rolling fantail in failing light, they were the punctuation on 30 years of institutional preparation for exactly that lifeboat. Fort Bragg's pipeline, the operator training course, builds gunfighters who are also surveillance, agent handlers, drivers, and ghosts, because the land ledger demands a man who can breach a cell door in Panama on Tuesday and disappear into a foreign capital by Friday. JSOC does not grade its scalpels against each other. It reaches for the one shaped like the wound. The water writes Navy, the land, the buildings, the borders, the networks, the generals who need guarding, and the prisoners who need unguarding. The ledger has written the same word beside those for 4 decades, and the word is CAG. One more thing needs saying plainly, because this channel does not do slander. Nothing in this ledger diminishes the men of Dam Neck. Their lane is real, their dead are real, and the fantail shot over a pitching sea remains one of the finest pieces of shooting in special operations history. The difference the record actually supports is about light. The maritime lane, by its nature, ends in daylight, a rescued captain waving from a deck, a grateful crew, cameras. The land lane, by its nature, ends in silence, an agent network nobody admits, a general who was never attacked, a valley mapped before the battle, a man in a cell who simply did not die. Both units carry the flag. Only one of them is structurally guaranteed to be invisible while doing it, and after 40 years, the men of that unit seem to prefer it that way. The quiet professional culture is not a slogan at Fort Bragg. It is a filing system, and the files stay closed. Naylor needed hundreds of interviews and a decade of reporting to reconstruct even the outline you just heard, and by his own account, the deepest land lanes stayed dark to him too. So here is the argument to have below, and it is a real one. 2 lanes, 2 kinds of glory. One unit's finest hours play in theaters. The other unit's finest hours are still classified and may stay that way until every man involved is dead. Which is the heavier burden, doing the work and getting the world's applause, or doing the work and watching history credit someone else, forever, on purpose? The veterans in this comment section know exactly which lane they would choose, and some of them already did. Tell me which one you could actually live in, because the ledger is not hypothetical to the men it sorts. Official members get the versions that do not survive the public cut, the lanes, the names, and the details we trim before publish. The door is below.